Merry Christmas. It is a Merry Christmas at times for many people, and for most people, some of the time, this time of the year can feel less than merry. And so that's what we're going to talk about today here at Freeman Medical Clinic, the concierge medical clinic in Austin, Texas, where you can also have life coaching. And life coaching uses validated psychology techniques to help people get into their own brain, figure out their own brain, and train your brain for the game, and that game is life. So, I'm gonna dive right in. I've had some good questions generated by our friend at ChatGPT. Yes, we are using AI here at the clinic, and we're loving it. It's super fun. I'm just gonna say a little bit about that. I know that some healthcare providers are afraid of AI. I know that a lot of people are afraid of AI, and there are a lot of reasons to be afraid of anything in the world. Personally, I just look at technology as something to be utilized for the good of the people. And as long as we're doing that, then I think it's a benefit. I can only imagine, because even before I was born, the telephone was invented, but we do hear stories, if y'all haven't heard this. Even my grandparents would tell stories about how afraid people were of the telephone, and how they thought it would, being close to your head, that it would cause brain tumors, that it would put thoughts into your head, that the government was putting thoughts into your head by these telephones. So some of these concepts and fears have been around for a long, long time. And I'm not saying that those things aren't happening. Personally, I don't believe that they are, because it serves me to believe that they are not. So AI, how do I look at AI as a doctor? Number one, my mission is to help my patients feel better and to do the best work, the best job I can for my patients. And if that is helped, if that's augmented by using AI, then I'm going to use AI. So that's what I have to say about that. So, a few questions here that Celeste and I thought were really good ones. How do you navigate, and I'm going to be asking y'all questions, so if you're joining us on the Instagram Live, please put your answers in there. They'll be anonymous. We'll not call your name out as to who you are, unless you're my mom and she likes to have her name called out, so we're going to call her out. Not really, she's not on Instagram, my mother. How do you navigate feelings of loneliness during the holiday season, especially when traditions are changing? So it may be that you're in a family where you did things differently when you were a kiddo. Maybe that has changed now. Grandparents pass, traditions change. How do you navigate feelings of loneliness that may come up from that? Are there traditions, I would love to hear about traditions that you've created in your generation that maybe you like more than what you did when you were a kiddo. So go ahead and type that in if you have any thoughts on that. I'm just going to keep moving right along. What strategies do you use to manage the emotions that come with changing traditions and family units during the holidays? So on the back end, if you will, here in medicine, we see the unmarried times, because we know the statistics are there that depression increases, anxiety increases, even suicide attempts increase during the holiday season. And some of this probably has to do with the shorter days and the less sunshine that people have because of seasonal affective disorder, things like that. But also it can be a sad time because of these changing traditions. So just checking in with y'all's mental health. If you have any ideas that have helped you, tell us so that we can share it with our folks listening, tuning in here today. We find that it is helpful for a lot of people to check in with your doctor. Remember, you don't need to be sick to check in with your doctor. Well, it depends on your doctor. Certainly here at Freeman Medical Clinic, where we are a concierge clinic, we like our people to check in with us for anything and even for nothing. Sometimes people will just say, I don't really know what's going on. I just felt like I needed to check in. And we love that. It makes us feel so good that our patients feel that comfortable with us. And it's also fun to check in with people and help them before something becomes a bigger problem, before it gets super blown up. So if you're just feeling blue, if you're feeling down, some things that have been shown to help people in general, these are things we've all heard before, but they really do work. Exercise. So if you can get out and take a walk, if you're like me and you're addicted to swimming, Barton Springs is particularly beautiful right now. I've been swimming in Barton Springs since I was 9 years old. That's the earliest confirmed visit to Barton Springs by my mama, that we came up from Houston, because I'm from Houston originally, and swam there. And the other day, so last week I was swimming, I saw more fish in Barton Springs than I have ever seen in there before. It was so beautiful, it was just amazing. Taking a walk, golfing, it's a great time of year to golf and play tennis here right now because it's not super hot. Anything you could do to exercise. Why does that make you feel better? Because literally just moving your body gets that circulation flowing. And when your circulation is flowing, you have better blood flow, more blood flow to your brain. And when we have more blood flow to our brain, that helps circulate the serotonin and the dopamine, the good feeling hormones that we're all after, right? Anything we ever do is to increase the good feelings, and that comes with the serotonin release in the brain and the dopamine up there in the brain. And by the way, that's why we have traditions in the holidays. That's why we have a tree. That's why we put ornaments on the tree. It's to connect. So this tree has a lot of my personal family ornaments that go back several generations. And my mom's mom, my grandma Domning, has been dead a long, long time. But several of these ornaments, I get to connect with her. Her name was Moselle, old traditional Texas name. Moselle Domning loved having pieces of fruit on her tree. So I've got a pear right here, we've got some other pieces of fruit. And so when I'm hanging them, here's a pomegranate, I get to think about Moselle, and I get to connect to her in that way. So that's why I do that. We have traditions of hanging stockings. We have our stockings hung by our little, not chimney, but our little front desk with care. And we do that to connect with people as well. Other traditions, the food traditions we do, it's nostalgic, that taps into a part of our brain that makes us feel comforted and makes us have warmth. During this holiday season, I'm sure you are aware that many people will overeat and they will overdrink to try to increase in feelings of comfort, feelings of connection, feelings of warmth, feelings of joy. But this can be a goal that isn't always realized, because more doesn't always get you more of that dopamine. So when you eat the first 2 bites of turkey, or you have the first glass of wine, you might get a lot of dopamine, a lot of epinephrine, norepinephrine from food and alcohol. But then if you're wanting to keep numbing out, you'll find that it's a rate limiting, slippery slope, if you will, where more of the thing that you put in your mouth, whether it's food or booze, is not going to give you more dopamine or more serotonin. I wish it worked that way, but it doesn't work that way, y'all. So if you've noticed that there comes a point where you're not feeling better, just go ahead and put that fork down, go ahead and put that glass down, because you're right. More is not going to help you feel more better, if you will. Does that make sense? What resources or support systems have you found helpful in managing feelings of loneliness or grief during the holiday season? That is a great question. So hopefully you are being seen at a medical clinic where you feel comfortable, where you could go in and be seen during the holiday season if you're having feelings of loneliness or grief. This is also a great place for a life coach. and I am one life coach among many amazing life coaches out there. I do not specify in grief or loneliness. Grief and loneliness do come up when I'm life coaching my women over 40. That's really my niche area, is helping women over 40 with the coaching. But there are grief coaches out there, so if you're really dealing with that specifically, or loneliness specifically, I would say it would be good to find a coach who specializes in that. Are there specific activities or self-care practices that you recommend for those who may be struggling with loneliness or difficult emotions during the holidays? So I always go back to exercise because it increases that blood flow and increases the feeling of happiness via the hormones that I've already mentioned here earlier. Self-care practices are self-fulfilling prophecies. What I mean by that is when you give yourself a good manicure, when you put lotion on your skin when your skin is dry, when you take a good long hot shower, when you put yourself to bed, when you know you want to get a good night's sleep, when you get up early and have a good morning regimen, when you're journaling, what other things do people do for self-care? I mean, bathing in general is good self-care. Anything you're doing for self-care makes you feel better, and then guess what? When you feel better, you feel like caring for yourself more. When we care for ourselves more, we feel like caring more for others, which makes us feel connected and makes us feel warm and makes us feel happier and builds up that nice little dopamine waterfall that we all want, and serotonin. What else? I think just so here's the question again. Are there specific activities or self-care practices that you recommend for those who may be struggling with loneliness or difficult emotions during the holidays? Struggling with loneliness, we know because we see the statistics, much worse since COVID. But even since COVID COVID is still with us, but since we're not shut down anymore, guess what? Statistics, really good questionnaires for people don't show that feelings of loneliness and anxiety have abated. It's like they are really with us and they are ever on the rise. And this is true for all age groups, by the way. I don't like that that's the case, but that is the case. So it's important that we talk about these things. I see people doing things to combat their loneliness, like being in workspaces, not just working from home alone, but going to places where there are other people working, even if they're not working directly with them. So the old example of being at the Starbucks and doing your job, but we see that in a lot of other places, not just Starbucks, right? People are wanting to connect and be around other people. I think joining groups is really excellent. Now there is a Facebook group probably for anything and everything. I belong to a hiking group in Austin for women over 50. Like, you can get pretty specific with the groups that you want to join. If there's something that you've been wanting to try, go ahead and try it. If you want to join a Reddit group for people wanting to learn French because you've been putting off that learning of French for a while, you can do that. That's a way to combat loneliness. Finding a shared activity and other people to do that activity with, right? Okay, how do you communicate with friends and family about your feelings during the holiday season, especially if you're experiencing changes or challenges? Well, I'd love to hear from y'all if you have any recommendations on this, because in my family, we don't really talk about things like this, and I think that sadly this is true for a lot of people. I don't have any great recommendations on this, except that you can try to communicate with friends and family about your feelings during the holiday season, and then you're gonna know pretty quickly if that's someone who you feel safe talking about those things with, or is that person just gonna always direct you to the weather or what the dressing looks like on the turkey, because they do not wanna go there with you. And if they don't, my recommendation is don't push people. You know, everybody has their level of comfort, and not everybody feels comfortable talking about real emotions or the deeper emotions or uncomfortable emotions. So my recommendation again would be to give it a try, and then when someone shows you their level of comfort, meet them there and maybe move on. And this is why having a doctor is really great, because if you can't have your needs met with a friend or with a family member to discuss, to communicate your feelings during the holiday season, hopefully you have that third party who can provide that service for you. What advice would you give to someone who is feeling isolated or struggling with changing family dynamics during the holidays? Okay, I'm gonna start, I feel like this question is like asking me, what advice would I give to someone who is feeling isolated? I'm gonna start right there by reminding y'all, if you follow me, you know that I like to remind everyone that our feelings always come from our thoughts. So let's review that if it's been a little while since you've been on here. A thought is when two synapses, like antlers, when two synapses connect in the brain, there's a little electrical firing that happens. That's what a thought is. A synapse and a synapse come together, little electric spark, boom. That's what a thought is. That's all a thought is, okay? It's an electrical impulse that happens in the brain. Our thoughts create our feelings, okay? So if the feeling is isolated, if you're feeling isolated, my advice is to dive in and find out what the thought is that you're having, that thought in your brain that makes you feel isolated. I think isolated is probably a very uncomfortable feeling, not a feeling that most of us would want to choose. So we don't use toxic positivity here. We don't say, oh, I don't want to feel isolated, I'm just going to change my thought. That is toxic positivity. It doesn't work. The brain is too smart for that. What we want to do is dive in. So what would be a thought that would cause someone to feel isolated? Any ideas out there? I could have the thought, I'm all alone during these holidays, and then I might feel isolated. Okay, well, if you have the thought that you're alone and that makes you feel isolated, let's take a look at that thought. Are you really alone? This is why I know my other grandmother wrote Christmas cards. I remember being a little girl and asking my grandma Freeman, why do you spend all this time and energy, Grandma, writing these Christmas cards? It seems like a waste to me. I didn't understand it. And she said, well, I feel very connected because I moved to Texas to be with you kids, and we're from Arkansas. Most of my family and friends are still in Arkansas. And so she would feel less isolated in her new state of Texas when she would write Christmas cards to family and friends back in Arkansas. So I know this sounds very 1900s, because it is, but you can write a letter to someone. You could actually write a Christmas card to someone, and that could help you feel less isolated. So also thinking about people, thinking about someone else, thinking about a group of people, tapping into a memory. Think of a time when you didn't feel isolated. This is a great little trick for the brain that works well when we're having a feeling that we don't like, to think about a time when we didn't feel that way. That can also help us access what our thoughts were that led to a different feeling. So if the thought is, oh, I'm all alone, let's say I'm all alone this year during Christmas, and the feeling is isolated. Well, you can feel isolated, by the way. The other thing is that feeling to remember that feelings do pass. But if you want to change that feeling, remember a time when you didn't feel isolated. And everyone who is on social media watching this has had a time. And I can imagine some people may be living in the Arctic, like super isolated, really isolated. But guess what? They might not feel isolated. because their neutral circumstances are just their neutral circumstances. But if they've got a good team of Malamute dogs, they just might feel so connected to those dogs, they don't even need to be around another human being. But anyway, back to y'all. So you're watching this. If you're feeling isolated, 2 paths I recommend. Either just feel isolated and let it pass, and or remember a time when you didn't feel isolated. And then trickle that back to what the thought was that made you feel not isolated. See if you could maybe try that thought on again. I like to try thoughts on like a dress at the store. Some dresses are gonna feel really good. I might even wanna buy it. I might wanna wear it again. Some don't feel good at all. They don't fit well, they don't look good. That's fine, I can just take it off. Thoughts are like that too, did you know that? You can just try on thoughts. And if they serve you, if they give you a feeling, if those thoughts lead to a feeling that you like, keep it. But if it doesn't, just put it back on the rack, move on to a different thought. And then the second part of this question is, what advice would I give someone struggling with changing family dynamics during the holidays? I love this question, it's probably my favorite one so far. So, we know intellectually that change is the only constant. We would say that all the time. Everything is going to change, right? But look, there's nothing wrong with you when it feels uncomfortable, maybe even yucky, when things change. Because while it's expected, it is very uncomfortable to our lower brain, really when anything changes. If you get that dream job and you're leaving the job that you don't like, guess what? You're gonna have feelings, a lot of uncomfortable feelings making that move, even though it's a change you want. This is how much the lower brain does not like change. So if there is family dynamics have changed during the holidays, there is nothing wrong with you that you might feel sad, you might miss the old traditions, the old ways. Just know that there's nothing wrong with you. You're just going through a change. So my recommendation is to be gentle with yourself, to recognize that you're going through a change, to acknowledge that the lower part of your brain is not gonna feel good because things are a-changing. And when we allow ourselves to feel the uncomfortable feelings, to acknowledge that they're there, they will pass more quickly. And on the other side are other feelings, half of which are gonna feel good, half of which are gonna feel not good, because that's the human experience, by the way. The human experience is to feel positive 50% of the time, negative 50% of the time. That's pretty much how it works out. So let those feelings come, let them pass. If you notice that you are overeating, if you notice that you are over drinking, especially during this holiday season, there's nothing wrong with you. This is simply the society we live in. And the vast majority of people who have access and means are going to numb their feelings with booze and with food because it is accessible for most people, it's affordable. I know it's not accessible for everyone, but for most people, affordable, accessible, socially acceptable. That's why most people do it, okay? So there's nothing wrong with you, and you're not broken, you're just human. Welcome to having a human brain. And when things get uncomfortable, that lower brain just wants us to feel better. It just wants us to numb out. So you can do that. Sometimes you'll just want to do that, okay? It just is what it is. You also have the option to not do that. You also have the option to just go ahead and feel the uncomfortable feelings. I'm going to make a promise to each and every one of you here right now, whether you're watching this in the future or you're watching us live. Whatever that feeling is that your brain wants to numb out to, it is going to pass. Sometimes these feelings can feel like a 2-alarm fire. Sometimes they can feel like a 3-alarm fire, but there's no fire. It just feels like that because you're having an uncomfortable feeling. Just let it pass. This is a superpower, by the way. Once you can get into a zone of allowing your feelings, urges are feelings, okay? Temptations are feelings, triggers are feelings. Once you can allow those, you start to master your own mind. So this is what I'm coming back to that I said at the outset. Having a good life coach trains you for the game. The game is life. When you learn how your brain works and you can learn to work with your brain, your life is so much more comfortable, I promise you. This is also an anti-aging technique. Of course, there's no such thing as anti-aging, only anti-age. I use that term because that term is used a lot in the popular vernacular. A longevity approach, an approach to feeling better as you do age, and therefore you will feel more youthful and look more youthful, is exactly what I'm talking about. Understanding where thoughts come from, understanding that our thoughts generate our feelings. Our feelings, my dear friends, are where our actions come from. We take actions from our feelings. If our feeling is isolated, we're gonna do a certain action. When we're feeling connected and all loved up, we're gonna have a different action. And then our actions net to us the life experience that we have, give us the results that we have. Well, have I answered these questions thoroughly, Celeste?
I think so.
Okay. I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas. I don't have to hope that you're going to have a Merry Christmas. I know that you're going to have some merry times around Christmas. I also know that you're going to have some not merry times around Christmas. That is also how it's going to be for me. So let's just take a moment to acknowledge sometimes things are going to feel merry, sometimes they're going to feel not merry, and that's the expectation. So play with this. I would love to hear when I check in next week how it went. How did it go? Did you play with and practice having an urge, a trigger, or a certain feeling and you let it pass? We want to hear about it, and I'm making a promise to you all. I'm going to be doing these Instagram lives and making these YouTube videos that Josh will put up on the YouTube channel the same day, every day at least until the day after Christmas, because I know that people struggle out there and the struggle is real. Bye.